Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tex Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. We're on our 8th episode, the 3rd week of the show, just moving forward, running on right about 4 cylinders, maybe one of those Volvo inline 5 cylinders or something like that. But yeah, everything seems to be just steaming forward. So, and number 8 apparently is a very maybe not literally the strongest number there is, because it's just one continuous loop. However, there have been arguments to say that 0 is actually a stronger number, because it's, if you think about it, to get the number 8, you'd have to take the number 0 and twist it, which would mean that 8 would be a very flimsy 0, more or less. So 0, not twisted, is very rigid and durable. So 0 probably is the strongest number there is out there. So yeah, ultimately episode 8, we've done many in the past. We have many more to do in the future, and good times balls deep will definitely be. I'll talk about that later before going into our next break. But what we're going to go ahead and do today, we're going to switch gears a little bit and use some props for the TV viewers. For the radio viewers at home, I'll try to illustrate and narrate what exactly I have here in my possession. But basically, a couple of weeks ago, there was an episode about indoor gardening too, but also outdoor gardening, and just what you want to do before getting your plants outside is to get them started, seedlings. So you can do that indoors, and you basically want to. You could probably do that anytime. I mean, if you want to start it in December and then just grow the plants for a few months and then, gradually transition them to being outside, that's also an option. In the past, I've literally grown plants over the course of the entire winter, but they generally, since the sunlight isn't readily available in wintertime, they don't generally grow very thoroughly. I mean, they'll grow a little bit, but not as much as you might think they would, because in the deep heart of winter, there's probably only about 6 hours of sunlight, and a lot of days are cloudy too. So normally during the summertime, there's probably closer to 12 to 14 hours of sunlight. So there's a big difference there, and plants can sense that, certainly. But so it's always a good idea to get. I mean, if you're gonna grow from a seed, then you pretty much have to start it indoors prior to going outdoors. So what you can do is, I got this big apparatus here. What it basically is it has 62 cells in it. Now they sell them in 32, 18, maybe 120, 44 or something. They got all different variations of it, but this one here is just 72 cells. They're hexagon shape. It's like basically a honeycomb design. And they got little holes in the bottom. They're just all cheap plastic. It's very cheap plastic. If you step on it or roll over it or hit it with a cargo ship, it's basically going to be destroyed. And unfortunately, that's just kind of how products are nowadays. They're just built as cheaply as possible to push them out the door, and quality doesn't really mean a whole lot anymore. So you definitely need to be very careful when you're handling these items like this. But yeah, the price is about $5, so it's nothing too extravagant. You can get some fancy ones with automatic watering features for more money. But ultimately, I just go to Menards and get whatever looks like it's going to work. I mean, I don't need some self-automated seedling starter kit here. So I mean, this one, just the dead plastic with the hexagon 72 cells in it, it'll work just fine. It's got a little cover here, so you're gonna have to leave generally you want to leave the cover on, then it'll hold the moisture in better. It won't dry out the soil quickly, so the seeds can germinate and sprout, or whatever it's called. Yeah, and I mean, when you buy seeds, it's pretty simple. Say you got a pack of sweet basil organic here. So on the back of the package, it'll say depth, 1/4 inch. Harvest 60-90 days. But yeah, the seedlings emerge in 7 to 14 days. Harvest when buds begin to form. So these seeds are very small. When you buy a package of seeds, you open it up, and there'll be just a lot of them in there. You really only need one seed in each pod here. It's not like sperm where you just shoot millions in and then hope one of them finds an egg cell and reproduces. You only need about one seed yeah, obviously you're going to drop more in, and if you want to play it safe, you can put, 3 of them in each pot, and then after the 7 to 14 days when the seedlings begin to sprout, then you'll want to cut the, just whatever ones you're not comfortable with. Maybe one has a funny color to it, or one is growing sideways, or one is really small and growing in circles. So yeah, ultimately you want to cut the excess seedlings as soon as possible. That way all the nutrients will be dedicated towards the one individual plant that you're going to focus mainly your attention on. So yeah, after the 7 to 14 days, then they'll sprout and whatever. So then on the same package, it'll say when you should transplant it outside based on where you live in America. So there'll be a colored map on there, and then it'll have blue, red, green, yellow, indigo, orange, violet. All those different colors will say, all right, if you live in this zone, so central Minnesota, it'll have a blue color. If you live in this zone and you're growing broccoli, yeah, here in the 72 cell system, I have 3 rows of broccoli, 6 rows of broccoli, 3 rows of raw broccoli, and then 3 rows of lettuce. Reason why to grow so many broccolis is because that's generally, yeah, they're very easy to grow. You just space them 12 inches apart, and then they just, as long as you feed them properly and water them and everything with rainwater, then they'll grow just fine. And yeah, so you get the figure out the plants you want to stick in here, and then you want to keep this thing watered too, and then you'll leave the cover on, and once they start to sprout a little bit, then you can gently remove the cover, and at that point, when they start forming leaves and things like that, and they start forming their solar collectors, the leaves, then you typically want to put it in a south-facing window so that they can get the sunlight. And that's the thing too. Right away, you don't really need to stick this thing in the sunlight right away. You just stick it off in a corner or some dark, damp part of your house. I mean, it probably is a good idea to keep it in a temperature above 60 degrees. It might even say on the package here something about that too, but they typically aren't too elaborate with the packaging. It just tells you common sense things because, in all honesty, that's basically all you need to grow plants, just common sense. You don't need a lottery or nothing like that to figure this stuff out. So these plants here, using broccoli as an example, and lettuce, on the package it'll say transplant or planted in April or May or something like that. So once you know that the freezing temperatures are gone and that it's probably not going to frost overnight, and you got a pretty nice little seedling going here, then you can probably transplant it outside. And another thing too, this apparatus here is just one option. What you probably want to do with these things though is, this is one of those items where, like similar to a lot of tools just in society, in America in general, capitalist society, old tools are, as it pertains to tools, generally the older the better because they're built to last. Like if you go in some old machine shop, you'll see these tools from pre-World War II, and they're just solid iron. The precisions are within a thousandth of an inch after 100 years, and everything, it just runs great. And the tools are built strong. They're just built with pride, built with love and care, and that's, I guess you could say that's probably when America was great. And hopefully, obviously this podcast isn't going to do the job, but hopefully just getting back to that mindset of putting pride in what you do and dedicating yourself and showing up for work with a sense of purpose and pride and motivation and dedication, and so that you truly believe you're doing something you should be doing and that you're good at, and that you can take pride in and be very proud of yourself. So that's ultimately how to make America great again, just individuals working towards building something that'll last. Whereas these little plastic planters, they accomplish their objective, they work, but if I drop this thing or if a meteorite hits it, it's pretty much dead, done. And I don't know, maybe when I try to transplant the plants then too, I'll poke a few more holes in this thing, or it'll just crack in half, and just maybe putting it through a temperature cycle would destroy it too. It's built very cheaply. So if you're in your grandma's old farmhouse or something, and you see a bunch of these planters in the cellar just stacked up in the corners, the old stuff like this is probably better quality and it'll last you a very long time. And it's a very simple device too. So getting old, simple equipment like this is usually the way you want to go. So, I mean, there even like metal planters or aluminum ones, maybe titanium ones. That would definitely be preferred. I mean, obviously you don't need to have them, but it's one of them items where, yeah, you don't. I mean, it's good to use them, definitely. But I know for a lot of people that get used to the modern lifestyle and just going to the grocery store and buying food, you just don't have it ingrained in your brain that you need to use these type of seed starters. And on top of that too, you know, you can always go to a store and then buy a starter plant and then just stick it in the ground and water it and then put plant food on and manure and all that other compost and all that other stuff too. So that's an option there. Yeah, I mean see, if you start with seed startlings, it gives you about 3 steps to make it right. So ideally, you'd want to start with the seed starters, and want to have them grow, you know, 7 to 14 weeks. They'll sprout and germinate, whatever. And then after, you know, when it says on the package when you can put it outside, April or May or whatever. Now, when you put it outside too, it'll probably also say on the package that you should leave it in the sun, or leave it not in the sun. Leave it in the shade during the day and then at night bring it in for about a week. Then you'll harden the plants. Now, that's for a beginner that doesn't really pay too much attention and not very good at reading. That's usually one mistake you can make. Is last year, for example, I had this big tray and I was like winter or green beans or something and maybe broccoli or beets. And then I went outside with them. I grew them inside, you know, they had leaves. The leaves weren't humongous, but they seemed to be somewhat flourishing. So I brought it outside, just dumped it off in the, you know, the south facing, you know, on the south deck here. So they were pretty much in the sun all day. And right within a few days, they were dead. So, I mean, it wasn't, you know, I was obviously surprised because I wasn't very educated in transplanting plants from inside to outside. I mean, I did it before and it seemed to be successful, but to just stick them outside and leave them in the sun all day was a pretty dumb thing to do. So ultimately, you need care when you're transplanting from inside to outside. Yeah, I mean outside to inside. I haven't really tried that yet, but yeah, maybe in the fall time you could give that a shot with some of your plants. But ultimately, you usually want to just collect seeds from your plants and then save them so that you can continue to use them over and over and over again. Because yeah, ideally, after these plants grow, you transplant them outside, you go through the proper transitory phase, you know, leave them in the shade for the day and bring them inside do that for about a week, and then you can put them outside in your garden when you know that there's not going to be any frost. If there's frost, the leaves are basically just they're like humans, you know, 70% water or something. And then the leaves are going to freeze and wreck, and then the plant might grow new leaves and it might not, it's difficult to say. Or if it's, you know, like with your fruit trees, if they're budding and then the frost comes and wrecks all the buds, then you're not going to have any fruit for the year, which is a complete, total disaster. So ultimately, after you get the plant outside and you plant it, then you want to, you know, start watering or putting the compost on and everything. And, you know, using broccoli as an example, on the package it'll say 12 inches apart. So now you could have the mindset of playing it safe and thinking, oh, I'll plant them 20 inches apart just to be safe. But in all reality, just take them 12 inches apart because, yeah, there might be some overlap, but the closest you can get them together, then the more shade they'll have on the ground, the less weeds will grow. You won't waste any space. You'll just get the most out of what you got, basically. I mean, if you're growing broccoli for pragmatic purposes of consuming it, you want to utilize all the space you have. Or you don't want to just plant them 2 feet apart because you want to have some safety margin or something. I mean, it's just, as far as plant distances, there are some plants like acorn squash and sweet potatoes that just want to spread and take over every plant around them. So it is important to read the package and to do a little bit of research on certain plants, because last year I had acorn squash that just grew tremendously in there. I got some pretty giant squashes out of the deal, and they're very delicious too. But what they would do is they would have these runners, and then they would find and seek out other plants and then just kind of wrap around them and suffocate them. So it was basically, the eggplants or the cauliflower. So I basically had to go out there every once in a while and just cut those runners off that were trying to, intertwine with the other plants so that they wouldn't suffocate them and, take out all their nutrients and cut off their supply of water and vital nutrition to their leaves and fruits and buds and all that and vegetables and all that stuff too. So yeah, I mean, if you're just growing all broccoli though, if you're just going to eat a lot of broccoli or cauliflower or whatever the case may be. Now for me, I do that because they're cruciferous vegetables. They don't have they don't have a lot of carbohydrates in them. They're very Atkins diet friendly, and that's generally what I consume on a regular basis, pretty much. So I figured if I had it's good to measure out your garden too. So say it's 25 or 20 feet, 25 by 25, 20 by 25 feet. So you got 500 feet, and if you're going to plant them, 12 inches apart, you obviously don't want to plant them in a whole grid 12 inches apart, because you need to have rows that you can be able to walk through and actually harvest the broccolis and pull the weeds and things like that. So you'll plant one row, all of them 12 inches apart, and then you'll give yourself maybe 18, 24 inches as a walkway, because when the plants grow, the walkway is going to get smaller too. So if you give yourself 24 inches, the plants are going to grow maybe 6 inches in both directions, so that only leaves you about 12 inches to walk between, which is probably enough. I mean, you don't need to, drive a crane through your rows of broccoli too. You just need to walk through. You can 1 foot in front of the other too, so you can be very narrow. and you can also use the compost barriers too. Just lay them things down, and poke some holes in every 12 inches or whatever. And then you probably don't really need to weed at all. Just water it and then give it some plant food every once in a while, or manure, compost, things of that nature. So yeah, it's a very good thing to do, and it's just a positive experience to be able to go outside every once in a while and just lay around in the dirt and dig up some plants. But ultimately, it looks like we're coming up to a break here. So what I wanted to do is we're gonna have Good Times Balls Deep in the very near future. I talked to the show's host just last night actually. He was giving me all these sources of information that he's researching on, and he's putting in a lot of work. I mean, if you didn't know him, if you just showed up at his house one day and saw all the work and effort that he's putting into Good Times Balls Deep, you'd probably assume that he was like some guy working a full-time scientific research job while getting his PhD on the side, and then on top of that raising a family, and then working an overnight shift at a food supplier place so that he can feed his family and feed America and just give back to society in general. So I mean, yeah, I'm just super excited that we're going to bring you Good Times Balls Deep pretty soon. And we did have some discussions about possibly maybe filming some promos prior to the actual show, or just going ahead and then just filming the show. So yeah, he's definitely excited. He's putting a lot of effort and time into it. I think, if anything, he might be putting too much time and effort into making it great again. But like I said before, I mean, he's used to winning. He's pretty much wins at everything he does, and he's used to flawlessness and perfection, pristineness. So yeah, I mean that's definitely gonna show once Good Times Balls Deep does hit the Make Minnesota Great Again channel. And ultimately I'll try to contribute in any way I can, and obviously do use text messages as a stepping stone for Good Times Balls Deep, and for promotional and advertisement and things like that too. So you're listening to Text Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. I'll be back in 3 minutes. Thank you very much for listening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tex Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. I'm glad to bring the show to you once again, where it's March 22nd, 2018, the second day of spring. However, the temperatures outside are probably about 40 degrees and no snow today, but apparently in a couple days there's going to be a bit of a blizzard again. So that's probably about the third winter so far here in Minnesota. But you know what? You got to be a winter soldier. You got to soldier on through, and it just makes you enjoy spring and summer that much more. Well, once we can get past winter, and yeah, it looked like 22 days till the Princeton Speedway opens up again. So, as always, super excited for that. It should just be a good year for racing, hopefully. And you know, I don't know if this is considered late snow, but a couple of years ago, probably maybe it was about 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, there's a major snowstorm that actually happened in the middle of April. And then, of course, you know, it warms up to 40, 50 degrees right after that. But, yeah, I mean, the season opener at Princeton Speedway was a little in limbo because you weren't sure if all the snow was going to melt or not. And then, fortunately, it did. However, the track conditions were, you know, the program on season opener still, it went just fine. But, of course, the track was a little more rutted up than it normally would be in the middle of summertime, too. And then, plus, you know, later in the evening, you know, the sun sets a little earlier in the April than it does in June or July. So when the sun sets, you know, the moisture starts creeping up, and then it gets to the surface of the track. So then it has a tendency to cause a mess early in the season, but during the summer it's usually not a big deal. And you know, that's ultimately what makes dirt track racing great again. Just all the changing track conditions, just from nighttime to daytime and from day to day. I mean, no dirt track is probably going to be the same at any given time. And ultimately, all the drivers, crew chief, and flagmen, and track prep workers, they've probably seen just about every type of condition out there. So, I mean, they have probably a deluge of information or notebook information to set up and adjust their car for practically any circumstances there. So, I mean, it's just super highly organized, intelligent people that get involved with dirt track racing. I mean, it's not something that you just show up and then start driving in circles for. I mean, it requires an intense amount of concentration and research and just drive and hard work and talent, and need to have good financing and solid family support structure and good friends to help you out and stuff too, you know, jack your car up and change tires and things like that. It's just, yeah, but I mean, for everyone involved, it's just a 360 win, so I mean, everyone that's involved with it pretty much loves it. I mean, yeah, sometimes if the wind is blowing in the direction of the stands, it does get kind of dirty and messy, but you know, then you just bring your little face shield and your eye protectors and bring some clothes you don't really care for and some seat covers for your personal car, and you're pretty much good to go once you get to that point. But yeah, ultimately I'm digressing. So we need to get back to the seeds here. So when I was saying earlier, you know, you can get this big 72 cell seed starter kit and then start the seeds indoors and move them outside after, you know, when it says to move them according to the packet. So we'll just say April for broccoli here. And, you know, go through the transitory phase, you know, a week outside in the shade, bring them inside at night, and then you can plant them after that. When you know there's not going to be any frost on the ground, so probably, you know, early May, late April, whatever. And then, yeah, you'll go through the plant, you'll put it in the ground, you'll water it, and then after 60 to 120 days, whatever, it'll start shooting broccoli sprouts. You'll cut them off, you'll eat them. You generally want to grow enough to last you through winter. So, you know, you want to have a pretty big chest freezer and all that other stuff for storage. And what I was saying earlier about, you know, you have 3 steps. And ideally, this is ideal circumstances. Now, if you try to grow seed startlings and you fail cataclysmically, what you can do then is there's this guy in Malacca. It's pretty close to Malacca Unclaimed Freight. It's about 20 minutes north of the Princeton Speedway and about 30 minutes northwest of St. Cloud, Minnesota. He's a really nice guy. You know, I think I was gonna buy some blueberries from him. You know, the Superior and, you know, big blue, little blue kind of blueberries. So I saw him on Craigslist and I just went out there and, you know, I probably drive through a spot of his yard that I shouldn't have. But I mean, he was still a pretty nice guy. You know, he was a pretty cool guy. He greeted me. He was super friendly. He showed me all of his blueberry plants, you know, in his own personal garden, and what he does to grow them successfully. How he uses pine needles and you know, mixes some vinegar in and creates an acidic soil, which is very important for the blueberries. And then how he prunes the dead branches or puts nets over during a certain time of the year so that the birds don't eat it. And, you know, he was just telling me all kinds of stuff, really. I mean, it was just extremely helpful, unsolicited information. You know, he just did it because he was a nice guy. You know, he wasn't giving me some sales pitch or nothing. It was like I was already buying the blueberries, so he was just trying to help me out too. And you know, what a lot of people find out if you talk to me for more than 10 minutes or so, I'm not a very smart guy. So when he saw that, he probably knew that he should probably help me out because he wants me to be successful, because he knows that for America to be great again, not only do you personally have to be successful, but you also have to help others be successful when you know that you have the skills and talent to do so, which he absolutely did too. You know, he wasn't speaking didactically or in a condescending fashion either. He was just a friendly guy. He's like, yeah, you know, I don't have a PhD or nothing like that, but this is all empirical evidence, what I've observed over my many, many years of growing blueberries. You know, he probably was growing them for 20, 30 years. I mean, he had one plant next to his house it was literally probably a 20-year-old blueberry plant. I mean, the thing was about 5 by 5 feet if you measured the outer tips of each branch. You know, it just, radius-wise, it was probably 2.5 feet. So the total diameter was probably 5 to 10 feet, somewhere in that. It's a very big plant. You know, very luscious. It made just tons of blueberries. You know, obviously the guy knew what the hell he was doing. You know, I mean, some other people I know, they've had blueberries for 20 years and they still look like starter plants, more or less. So it does take a sweet science to grow blueberries in particular. I think they're just a little bit more finicky because they require the acidic soil. So, you know, you need to put all the pine needles and pine cones and maybe water them with vinegar. And of course, I always use rainwater. That was one other thing that he reiterated too. But yeah, you know, after he went through all the blueberry ranch, you know, other people were showing up too because, you know, anyone that goes there once is going to want to go there over and over and over again because he was just a really super nice guy. He had fair prices. He had a very clean, organized setup there. I mean, his place wasn't along 169. It was probably about a half a mile from Malacca Unclaimed Freight. It was on some road that runs parallel to 169. I don't know if it was a county road or a busier city road, but it was a fairly busy road. You know, it said so-and-so's greenhouse on the side of the road. You know, he lived right next to the place, but it had a professional greenhouse and everything too. It was a very nice place. You know, he took a lot of pride in it too. So ultimately, the other customers were kind of filing in and out, so he would interact with them and things of that nature. So that left me some time to look at some of the other plants he had. And he had a lot of starter plants too, sweet potatoes, acorn squash, broccoli, cauliflower, okra, and all that stuff. So I didn't even, he might have had a price listed, but I mean, at that point, I didn't even care what the price was. It's just, which is extremely rare for me because, you know, I don't really like spending money, don't really like making money either, so it's a good combination. So, you know, I picked up a bunch more plants. You know, I had a bunch of sweet potatoes, acorn squash, cauliflower, eggplant, and then I bought that from him too. So I probably had about six blueberry plants and maybe about 16 starter plants, and I don't think it was more than $80 for all that stuff. I mean, it was kind of an end of a year sale too, so it was like buy 2 blueberry plants get 1 free, or buy 1 starter plant get 1 free, or something like that. So he was kind of gearing down for the year because I think it was like late June, early July or something. So it was that time of the year where it was probably a little late to put starter plants in, but you know, I was getting late. I already had some starter plants in. You know, this was before I was doing seed plants. So I had some starter plants in, and then I was going to I didn't even have any intention of getting starter plants. I just wanted to get blueberries. So then when he had these starter plants available, and he was a really super cool, awesome guy that obviously knew what the hell he was doing, so I knew that if I get the starter plants from him, they're probably going to be super successful and very luscious and provide plenty of nourishment over the winter and, you know, for the remainder of the fall once they were to harvest for him. So yeah, I bought all that stuff from him and brought it home and planted it in the ground, and it was just, it probably grew better. I mean, the things that he had, they were in containers for probably 2 months, while the seed starters that I already had were in the ground for those 2 months. And the ones that he gave me grew better than the ones that I already had. So I mean, so it's like, yeah, growing stuff is super easy and anyone can do it. You know, you don't need a law degree from Santa Clara or whatever. You can just grow plants and then you can be kind of a moron and it'll still be successful. I mean, they're living beings that seek to survive, and unless you do something really silly like you don't water them for a month when there's a drought outside, I mean, there's a pretty good chance they're going to survive and thrive. You know, you just have to do give it some plant food or manure, or do some soil tests to make sure everything is up to specification and running good for you. So yeah, ultimately, yeah. So okay, so if your seedlings fail, then you can get the starter plants. You can get them at that guy's place in Malacca if you live in Minnesota. I mean, hell, if you don't live in Minnesota, try to look him up online. Guy that grows plants in Malacca. You know, maybe you'll find him. I forget what his company name was, but yeah, I don't know if he'd mail them or not, but who knows? I mean, I've never mailed plants before, so it's hard to say. And yeah, so you can get the starter plants. Now, see, if it says 7 to 14 days to germination, and it's 14 days and they haven't germinated yet, you might have an ass full of trouble. So then that's when you might want to consider getting starter plants or just putting in new seeds and trying it again. Because if you have old seeds, you know, maybe they're expired or maybe they ran through some heat cycles that heat them up too much or cool them off and that killed whatever living DNA is within them. So there is that to consider as well. And yeah, so you can, if after the 14 days the seeds don't sprout, you can maybe give it another crack, and then if they don't sprout again, then you must, I don't know what the hell is going on, but yeah, you can go ahead and get starter plants then, and then just stick them in the ground. And then ultimately too, if you got really terrible soil or it doesn't have the proper nutrients, and you know you're too lazy to do soil tests or whatever, which is completely understandable. I mean, I've done a couple soil tests, but they probably weren't very accurate at all. So if you get the starter plants and the plants still don't grow, then you know you got your third safety measure. You can just go to the farmer's market or go to Big Joe Rosso's Organic Foods, and then get your own broccoli and cauliflower. And then hopefully by the next year, once you give it another crack, then you'll be more successful. So it's good. So that's what, I mean, you don't need to be successful with the seed startlings, but you're just kind of, you're giving yourself a higher probability of success too. And if you live in a coffin apartment in downtown Minneapolis or St. Paul or Ethiopia or whatever, or Mogadishu, you can use, these starter plants are probably something that you would use year round then. You just find a south-facing window and then just, you can buy soil from the actual Menards or your local Big Joe Rosso's feed and seed store. So you definitely, so it is nice to have just living plants indoors too. And that reminds me of another thing too. I wanted to provide another example here. See, this is just, this purple planted erotic angel plants. This is just something that you can simply get at Walmart or Fleet Farm or even the guy from Malacca probably sells this stuff too. I mean, this is just an indoor plant. You know, it's got huge leaves, so it can pretty much absorb and suck any type of light you have, artificial light, fluorescent light, incandescent bulbs, LED bulbs, but generally just stick it close to a window, south-facing window, even a north-facing window if you don't have any south-facing ones available. And then what these indoor plants do is they provide, you know, obviously, you know, they take in sunlight and then they produce oxygen and they take in carbon dioxide and other toxins too. So, and then, you know, I don't know if they regulate humidity, but they definitely, in the throngs of winter, they definitely provide better humidity for your environment too. So it's just healthier and your house smells better. It just feels better. It feels like you're at one with nature, which is ultimately what humans were designed to be. You know, we weren't really designed to live inside these boxes all of our lives and stare at TV screens and, you know, talk in front of cameras or anything like that. So it is good to at least have that balance in your life and try to create some type of, try to bring the outdoors indoors, basically. And, you know, it's super easy. I mean, this one doesn't have any instructions on it. You know, all it says is grown in Costa Farms. And so, but when you get it, they'll have a little tag inside of it that'll say, you know, water if soil is dry the first 2 inches, and then feed liquid plant food every 2 weeks or so. So it's pretty simple stuff. I mean, you have to be fairly negligent to not be able to keep this thing alive. You know, plus as a living being, it'll give you plenty of warning signs that it's maybe coming to its end. Like, for example, this one looks like some of the hens pecked at this when I had it outside for a little bit, but ultimately, I mean, the leaves still look pretty green. They might be withering a little bit, so it probably could use some plant food ultimately. So I'll probably have to do that. And you know, it's good to be somewhat organized too. Just all your plants, give them the plant food at the same time, or pay attention to them. Just keep an eye on them to make sure they're living and thriving and making you great again, making your family and kids great again too. And you will have animals, and if you've got indoor animals, which I certainly don't do because that one wild animal living inside a house is enough to clean up after. So if you do have animals indoors, just make sure they're not chewing away or gnawing on the plant, because some plants might be poisonous or dangerous to them too. If they have, like poison ivy, for example, is obviously dangerous for humans. So if there's a certain type of plant that's dangerous to animals, just do a little bit of research. Just look up exotic angel and colorama. If that's dangerous for cats and you got an indoor cat, then you probably don't want to buy it. I mean, it's pretty simple stuff there. So yeah, I mean, you do need to think a lot about what you're doing. Just try to focus on the task at hand. That reminds me of another thing too. Yesterday when I went to Menards to buy some organic dirt or whatever. Normally it's a good idea to save some dirt from fall from your compost pile, and to just then in the fall you can fill up your seed planters, and then in the late winter then you can plant stuff in it. But yeah, I had to go buy some organic dirt, and then when I was coming home, I was at a stoplight, just a regular intersection, one left, right, straight back, straight behind you or whatever, just a simple cross, a plus sign, and the light turned green, so I went through, and then there was an emergency vehicle, an ambulance coming in my direction towards me. So I went ahead and I pulled to the side of the road. Now, here's where you have to think. See, what I could have done was I could have just mashed the brakes, pulled to the side of the road, stopped right where I was. However, there's about 5 cars behind me, so had I stopped right there, the 5 cars behind me would have been blocking the intersection. So I had to continue to move forward at a slow rate of speed, so that by the time the ambulance reached me, he could just get through the intersection, because all the cars behind me would be flushed through the intersection. Now it's important to think like that, because had I just stopped there, the intersection would have been blocked, and then it would have taken the ambulance longer to get to wherever it was going. So I mean, you need to be aware of your surroundings at all times, because if the ambulance was stuck, if the cars behind me had to back up so the ambulance could get through and waste a valuable precious seconds, it could have been disastrous too. I mean, there was one time where I was in St. Cloud. It was by the courthouse. There's that train track there where the trains always go super slow because they're going towards the train fields or whatever. So I was on 9th Avenue, I think it's called, and I was coming from the direction of Sauk Rapids. I went underneath that train bridge and then up to a stoplight. And right there you have City Hall to your left. Got the library a block ahead of you to the right too. And there's about 5 cars. There's a red light, and there's an ambulance behind us. So all of us were making a right turn. So the first guy that makes a right turn, he just stops right there. So there's 4 cars that still need to get out of the intersection, but this clown is just stopped right there, and it's like, you need to be aware that there's other people that exist in this world. Just because you're not on that road that the emergency vehicle is on doesn't mean that you haven't been at an acceptable location to make sure that that road is flushed out, because you have to think of the greater goal here. The greater goal is to allow the ambulance, the emergency vehicle, the fire truck to proceed through the intersection or make a right turn or left turn if they need to. It's not to get you out of the way. I mean, that's a very autistic way of thinking. Not to say being autistic is bad or anything. I mean, I'm sure I'm probably moderately autistic at some degrees, and maybe borderline on the spectrum. But when you think about what you're doing, you think about the greater goal and your role in that greater goal. It's not just, I need to be out of the intersection. It's, the intersection needs to be clear for the ambulance. What do I need to do to achieve that? Yeah, you require a bit more complex thinking, but it's just something you got to do. I mean, we're all in this world together. We're all making America great again, making Minnesota great again, making emergency vehicle transportation great again. So ultimately, we're going to have to, we're a little past our break time here, but Good Times Balls Deep will be coming in the very near future. We're probably going to film some, maybe some promos, or maybe I can run some commercials during text messages for Good Times Balls Deep. But ultimately, we'll probably just go ahead and just try to film a practice run, or just go ahead and film the show, hit the ground running and see where it leads us. I think that's probably just the way to go as far as podcasting goes. And the host of Good Times Balls, he's such a very talented individual that I think I could probably knock on his door right now with a camera and start filming, and it would be an exceptional show that a lot of people would watch and be interested in. I mean, He's an improvisational master, yet he still does all the prep work too. So I mean, it's just going to be a 360 win all around, and I'm super pumped for it. That like I said before, the biggest issue for me will probably be how to settle down, because I don't need any drugs to get stimulated at the prospect of good times balls deep, but I probably some type of downers or laugh screamers or sedatives, things like that. So ultimately, good times balls deep. It'll be coming in the very near future, and we may have some other podcasts too coming up. I mean, it would be nice to have a 24-hour cycle, but we'll see. I mean, good times balls deep, I think, is the primary focus and concern now. Not a concern, but the primary focus now. So you're listening to Text Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Text Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. It's good to have you here on this Thursday evening, March 22nd, 2018. We're on our 8th episode of Text Messages, and pretty soon we'll be on our first episode of Good Times Balls Deep. Today we've been covering seed starters and starting seeds, and then letting them sprout after 7 to 14 days, planting them outside. There is one other thing I wanted to mention about that. Now, you can, say for example, you go to a grocery store, you buy a bunch of Greek yogurt, or you bought starter plants in the past. You always want to save your containers too. You can always reuse them. That's sort of the minimalist approach, which is generally the approach I would prefer most of the time. Now, yeah, these kits here are great, but you still got to buy them, and if they get broken or something too, then you got to buy another one. So it's nice just to save old containers, like I say for example this sour cream container. It's a nice size. It's a 16 ouncer, and yeah, it doesn't have the holes on the bottom to drain the water or anything. But I mean, if you're only gonna have the seeds in there for 14 days or 7 days, or whatever, you don't. Probably about a month actually. Then you probably don't really need to drain the water. Just make sure it's not getting moldy or fungus or things like that too. And you might be wondering like, oh, why did I talk about, I got a bottle of sour cream here from a Texas company, but I just talked about buying local and organic and all that stuff too. Well, here's the thing. When you buy something like sour cream, or when you buy just food in general, you always want to consider all aspects. For example, the Old Dutch brand of sour cream, which is made in St. Paul here, it contained a lot of the fillers like carrageenan or locust bean gum oil, or just stuff that you weren't really sure if you should be eating it or not. And then the Daisy brand, which is a Texas company, it just has regular cream, enzymes. So it's like, yeah, it'd be better to have a local company with only cream rather than all the goofy fillers. And obviously a company from 1,000 miles away probably has some weird preservatives that they don't put on the label either. So there is that to consider. And it's all, a lot of it's based on convenience too, because if you say you just want to go to Cub Foods and that's all, you just want to go there, you're just going to buy what's available. You don't want to have to go to Cub Foods, then go to Super Value, and then go to Big Joe Rosso's Discount Foods, and then go to Aldi and just accumulate everything over a week. Just one-stop shop is basically the goal. So then it's just a matter of trying to get what works best for you. And these bigger containers here, like with the Greek yogurt, these are 32 ounces, so they're about double the mass, or the density. They're double the volume of the sour cream. So you can probably grow plants for a little bit longer in these. I mean, if you're going to grow a plant all winter, yeah, you can probably knock a few holes in it for the drainage and everything too. But, this is a pretty big container. You can fit plenty of dirt in there. You can probably grow a plant pretty big over the course of the winter, as long as you stick it in a south-facing window and you feed it plenty of plant food and all that stuff too. So yeah, it's just good to save your old containers. And if you're worried about plastic contaminants inside the dirt using these old plastic containers, that's understandable too. I mean, obviously you'd want to use glass jars instead, but with glass jars, you can't really poke a hole and drain them or anything. And when you take plants out of the glass jars, they're not like, these are a little flimsy, so you can kind of poke and play with them and loosen up the soil and pull the plant out. But with glass, it's just completely solid and stable, and it's not going to move at all. So that's what makes it difficult to transplant, or to move plants from indoors to outside using glass containers. And yeah, glass containers are more healthy and everything, and any of the food you store, it is a good idea to use glass. And if you're going to microwave stuff, it's a good idea to use glass too. And pretty much, as far as like water and such goes, there have been some study. Yeah, I mean, I forgot to bring my research paper with today, but there have been some studies that pretty much any bottle of water you get has plastic contaminants in it, and just about anything has, bisphenol A or whatever, BPA, the stuff that mimics estrogen and feminizes America and causes soy boys and all that other stuff too. So it is a good idea to try to get glass bottles as much as possible. I mean, yeah, if you're traveling or something and you don't have water and you need to get water, then yeah, just buy the bottle of water or whatever. Usually if I go anywhere, I'll bring, at any given time, I probably got about 10 glass bottles full of water in the fridge. So I'll just bring a few of them with if I go anywhere for a day or two, or whatever the case may be. And then of course too, the water here is filtered well water, so it doesn't have the fluoride or the chlorine in it and things like that. So that's why I try to avoid drinking water elsewhere. I mean, if I'm in a restaurant, I'll bring some water with, drink it all in the pickup or whatever before going inside, and then I won't drink anything at the restaurant. Now, yeah, obviously all their dishes are washed with fluoride water too, but you just have to. Sometimes you can look at life as a war, and that you just have to minimize casualties, because you are going to get contaminated with stuff here and there, and yeah, it's just a matter of minimizing it. And using plastic planter, starter, seedling containers the risk of it is okay based on the downside of trying to get plants out of a glass container, which is very difficult to do. I mean, you could I guess you could put some kind of lining in the glass container, but then it would sort of defeat the whole purpose of avoiding the plastic contaminants in the first place. So there is that. And yeah, ultimately, if it, when you're buying food and things like that, if it's in a glass container, I mean, you can save the glass container and use it for other stuff too, which makes it very valuable as well. And it's probably healthier. Milk used to be in these glass, like half-gallon glass jugs, and apple cider. There are still some versions of apple cider that got those big gallon jugs with them, just glass jugs, and pickle jars. Some of them still have the glass containers too. So yeah, I mean, I save all my glass containers because they can come in handy for many things. Like if you buy a bunch of onions, you just want to cut them up and have them ready for whatever dish you may prepare, then you can just stick them in the glass container and store them in your fridge for a while. However, glass and freezers don't work very well. So that's another case too. Glass doesn't work for everything. It doesn't work for transplanting plants from inside to outside, and it doesn't really work for freezing either. I mean, you can try it, but it's probably not going to work so well. If you have an entirely dried substance, it'd probably be just fine. But if you have any type of moisture expansion in the food that you're storing in the glass container, yeah, it will break. So just keep that in mind. Just go buy the whatever plastic containers they got out there, or when you buy meat, if you buy 200 pounds of cow meat or something, they'll have it wrapped up in those little paper bags. Yeah, I wouldn't save those paper bags because they got blood and everything on it too. So just better idea just to throw that out. I mean, it's not really worth the time to try to disinfect it all and all that goofy stuff. So just throw it away and get it out of your house, out of your mind. So if you do leave it around for a while, it probably will smell pretty bad. So a while back, I used to save old cereal bags. When I found those after a couple months, though, they would smell very bad and they'd basically be unusable. So I don't know what the hell they're putting in cereal nowadays, but it obviously wasn't. It says vitamin E for preserving or freshness or whatever, but yeah, it's if you reuse plastic bags, just stick them in your freezer. As long as they're not taking up a lot of space, because then you can reuse them easier. They're not going to go rancid or smell bad after a while. Similar to water, because with water, I've heard someone say that they fill up their water, or if they have an old bottle of milk or whatever, or not milk, but if they have old bottled water, they'll fill it up with new water and then just set it aside somewhere. And ultimately, if you store water in anything above 40 degrees, it will grow a lot of bacteria and it will be very unhealthy to consume after a few months. So if you're going to store water, either store it in your fridge or your freezer. And if you're storing water in your fridge that's been in there for a while, then just use it for cooking or for steaming, because you just don't want to take the risk of consuming a bunch of weird bacteria that'll make you sick and poisonous and all that too. So it's, there is that to consider. Just thinking and being smart about everything and not wasting money and wasting time on just goofy stuff that you don't really need. You don't need to buy a 16-pack of bottled water. Just buy a reverse osmosis filtration under sink kit, and then get a couple of years of filters, and you're good to go. And if you got city water, just they have carbon filters in there to filter out the chlorine, the bleach, the chlorine mostly. So. And then you can get, the filters for the floor. The filters in the fluoride will be in the reverse osmosis system as well. Because, city water is mostly clean and softened for the most part. It's not, well water is a little bit more of a challenge because it's harder water and you might have weird bacteria in it and things like that. But it doesn't have the fluoride and the bleach in it. So that's one of the upsides to it. And, that the alkalinity or acidity or whatever, the city water is probably right about where it needs to be as far as that goes. So it's just a matter of finding a filter for the chloride and the fluoride. That's mainly the ultimate goal. And then what that allows you to do is that you can accumulate your glass containers and then just use them. Like I use old apple cider vinegar jars or olive oil jars. See, the olive oil is better because with the amber colored glass, there may be some weird contaminants with the amber color, which I haven't looked into yet. But the reason why olive oil comes in the amber colored glass is because it impedes light, because when light shines on the oil, it sort of reacts with it and causes it to go rancid. So that's why the olive oil comes in the amber container. And I don't know if it's better or worse for water, but I just prefer drinking it out of it. You know, it's a nice square container. You know, it's a nice square bottle, so it's easy to hold. It's not like a circle bottle or anything like that. And it does present some difficulty when you're trying to find cup holders and things of that kind, but ultimately, you know, the old apple cider vinegar bottle or olive oil bottle, just a glass container will work just great for water. And you don't need to drink plastic water that comes from who knows where. You just got healthy water. It's like, yeah, the reverse osmosis filter house things, yeah, they're made of plastic and all that too. So I mean, it's, like I said before, you're not going to be completely 100% contaminant free. You know, it's just minimizing your risk is the biggest thing. Even if you live in a coffin apartment, just get some goofy filter that gets out all the weird stuff in the, you know, the fluoride and chloride and whatever else may be in there, and call it good. You know, drink out of glass bottles and you'll feel great. You'll feel healthy. You'll feel like the best of the best. Then, you know, it's just, if you can get rainwater too, you obviously would prefer to use that. Probably this, you know, I haven't yet filtered the rainwater I got here to use for consumption, because I got the 7-stage RO system, which seems to work just fine. If you don't change your filters, though, they will get moldy. So you need to change a couple of filters on a regular interval, and then maybe run some hydrogen peroxide or alcohol or even bleach through the system just to clean it out. Because if bacteria does begin to accumulate in it, it's just going to be a big mess, and you know, you're going to feel sick, and you know, your country's going to feel sick too. Ultimately, we've come to the conclusion of the show. I noticed on Monday's show went about 10 minutes over. I wasn't really paying too much attention to the clock here, so I apologize that for you, the ladies and gentlemen at home, if I wasted anybody's time or disrespected. Or, I mean, it is a slap in the face to do that to the viewers, because I mean, your time is valuable, and I appreciate the opportunity to be in your homes or on your computer screens or whatever, and hopefully someday maybe it'll inspire you to have a podcast if you're a cool person that likes hearing yourself talk for an hour or something like that. You know, sadly, you can't, I don't know, there's something about being a human where you just literally can't watch yourself or listen to yourself for more than, if I tried to watch this podcast after about 5 seconds, I'd have to shut it off, just because it's just so, it's like you almost go insane to watch yourself. You know, so it's difficult for me to get any accurate feedback of how the show is going or what direction it's going, or maybe if there's some weird sounds in the background that shouldn't be there too. So yeah, if I can get, you know, if any of you, the ladies and gentlemen at home, wanted to provide some feedback, just go right ahead. I mean, there's probably only about 3 people listening, which is, my target audience is about, if 2 people listen and enjoy it, that means the work I've put into it is double the output. So if 2 or more people listen to this podcast and you guys enjoy it, then I think we can declare victory. And speaking of victory, Good Times Balls Deep will be in the very near future. It'll just be winning galore. Everybody will be happy. America will be great again. St. Cloud will be great again. And you're listening to Text Messages with the Parasite Rick Tex. We'll be back Saturday night, it looks like. Don't know what the hell we're going to talk about, but we're going to be back Saturday night. Thank you very much for listening, ladies and gentlemen.